Guys, welcome back to Let's Be Frank, the home of men's mental health. I'm your host, Jack Coward, and alongside me, as always, Mr. Ryan Smith. Today, we have an extraordinary guest who is truly embodies the spirit of resilience and empowerment. Joining us is Bailey, a true beacon of inspiration and change. Bailey took on an incredible challenge at the age of just 17, right in the midst of a global pandemic. Fueled by a remarkable vision, he founded Be Great Fitness, initiative aimed at bridging the gap between fitness and vulnerability. During his humbling experiences, he has had fights of his own demons that we will be jumping into tonight. So stay tuned. But as always, Mr. Ryan Smith, how are you tonight, mate?
Do you know what? I'm not actually too bad, apart from a little technical error. My internet is, well, it's not my internet, I think it's more my brick that I've got as a laptop. But we're all good. No, we're all good, honestly. No, this chap tonight, I tell you what, he's got a couple of impressive sort of things, that's been going on in the past. And, we touched a bit briefly on it just before we come on. But for me, I just got to commend the man for one, his mullet, and two, his tash. Just love him. Just love him.
You know what?
That's probably because I can't
It
actually
is.
grow a tash
You
or a
can't,
beard or
mate.
anything.
And
But,
you slate
I'm
me
just, it's
for my
more
ginger
jealousy. That's
beard.
why I rip everyone.
You slate me for my ginger beard, mate,
Yeah.
all the time. And now we've got a chap on who is. And do you know what? I've known this guy for a while now, and I would never say it to his face.
Poor
And
him.
after this
Poor him.
podcast, I will never say it again. But he is genuinely one of the nicest blokes I've met. And you know me as a person,
Absolutely.
Ryan. You
He
know me as
said,
a
no, do you know what? He
person.
does actually see me. Yeah, he does.
You know me that the fact that I'm not one that's very open. I'm not one that chats all the time. I'm not one that if you see me in public, I'm kind of like approachable. But Bailey's got this aura about him that is so genuine, so authentic. He has the real passion in just the way he says hello to you. He's honestly a real top guy. And again, I'm not going to say this outside of the podcast or during a coffee, so no one will ever know. But Bailey, welcome to the show, mate. How are you, buddy?
Thank you so much. I'm really good. Do you know what? That's probably one of the best introductions I've had for an interview or a show. That was kind. I need to get that recorded and keep it because I feel like I'll never hear that again. But I like that. Thank you.
Which bit is it? But the ribbing about the
Just
tash
all
and
of it. I just
the
feel like
mullet, or
I've been
Jack.
picked up now. I can pull the mullet and the tash off, and I'm a nice guy according to Jack, which is great. So no, I'll take
I'll,
all
I'll,
There
I'll
we go.
print the intro off, mate,
There we
and I'll
go.
sign it for you, and I'll send it to the post. There you go, mate. Frame it.
that. Done. I'll take that.
But obviously, obviously tonight we're going to be talking about you, your business, the impact you've had, the work you're doing, but also we're going to look at the struggles that you've had because we've had a conversation before over a coffee, and we was talking about like my mental health, and then we started talking about your own mental health, and we thought, you know what, it's a perfect place to come on and showcase to people the authentic and true you, because you are a person when you meet, you're very happy, hyper, hello, how are you? And it's amazing. But I can see from the outside that there's always something little going on in it, which you've admitted you agreed. So I want you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
open the chat and start at any point in your life you want to and tell us who Bailey is.
Okay, no, I like that. I think you're absolutely right. For me, I'm very I'm very hyperactive. I'm very high energy all the time because I'm working with people that may not have that confidence or may not have that energy. I'm going into some communities and working with some vulnerable groups where I have to be the energetic one to bring the rest of the group up because I know my role there is to ensure that everybody else has a good time and can see the benefits of what we're doing. And I know that if I don't bring the energy, we won't have a good fitness session or we won't do some good work there. So I suppose for me, it goes back to who is Bailey. So I had a bit of a rough childhood starting out. If we go right back, I didn't really ever want to be a business owner. Business was just the way that it was, the way I was able to do what I do now. So when I was really young, it was me, my mum, my dad. My dad owned little businesses here and there. He owned little chocolate fountains and sweet stores, and we'd travel the country with him, and I'd go around and sort of hold the little money bags, and I didn't really fully comprehend what he did, but I'd sort of learn along the way, and I can imagine that's now impacted me further in life. But unfortunately, Dad got quite greedy with it, sort of wanted more, never quite felt fulfilled, and I think that's an issue a lot of business owners have, that lack of fulfillment, that wanting more constantly. And it got to a point where we had to remortgage the house. Sort of, we wanted the next best things, and it sort of messed our family up a little bit. My mum and dad didn't have a great relationship and ended up splitting up. We lost the house. Mum ended up having to file for bankruptcy, and we ended up on council estates, on benefits and free school meals. Dad messed a few more things up, bless him, and ended up doing a bit of time. Turned to growing marijuana to try and fund some of his businesses. And obviously it didn't work out very well for him. So we lost contact with Dad at a young age. Dad was a little bit sort of angry when we were kids, so we were always around quite a hostile environment. But then, after he went out the picture, it was, my sister was in, and it was just me and my mum and my sister for a while. And we couldn't really stay in one place, so constantly moving from council estate to council estate to council house to council house. And I feel like that really set the tone for my life for a while. We did all right. We got by. We wasn't poor. Like there was people a lot worse off than us, but I knew we were a little bit sort of different to some of the kids at school. But that sort of upbringing set things off. So my first experiences with looking into my mental health was when I think I was about 8 or 9, or something, or just a little bit older than that, and I sort of had no ability to control my anger. I used to lash out. I used to throw things. I used to get really angry and shouty and kick off. So in schools, I'd be flipping tables and kicking teachers and be put in these rooms and like restrained. And that's horrible memories that come back to me there. And then at home, I'd do the same, and I'd be throwing things around, smashing things. And I just had this uncontrollable anger as a young kid, and I didn't know where it came from. But I went to a place called CAMS, which is like a mental health service, I think, through the NHS, and that was my first experience with therapy. I hated it, absolutely hated it. I didn't spend very long in there, and it got to a point where we just sort of stopped doing it. We had plenty of social workers, plenty of CAMS workers, plenty of whatever random people coming in to check if our upbringing was suitable. So it was a bit of a rocky start. Yeah, it was a weird one, but I think I managed to sort of level things out a little bit as I got into the end of primary school, and then secondary school came around, and it all just kicked off once again. So I really hated secondary school, and I moved around for maybe 3 secondary schools. Again, found myself getting into trouble, kicking off, not wanting to be taught, not wanting to listen to the teachers. Sometimes almost thinking I was better than them, or knew more than them, or wanting to have my own little ways of doing things. So, like if it was maths, for example, I wanted to get to the answer a different way to the teacher, and I'd fight my case, and I'd really, really fight my case, and it would get me in a lot of trouble because I thought I knew best, and I wasn't always right, but I still wanted to do it anyway. But it got to a point where I had to leave school. It was either that or exclusion, and I was about 14 years old. So the option was, you either leave school and go into some homeschool scenario, or it's exclusion, and that reflects on your record, and sort of, whatever happens from there, you go into an alternative provision with other children that can't quite behave as normal secondary schools want. And I think that's where things really went downhill for me on my, mental health journey throughout life. I took a year out of school, and in that year, I just put on a little bit of weight. Socially, I wasn't very. I didn't flourish socially. I think now it's crazy because I can really hold myself in social situations, but back then I was just unconfident. Couldn't speak to people. I couldn't hold conversations. I remember there was a birthday party that I had. We went to bowling, and I had to go home early at my own birthday party because I just felt like people were talking about me or looking at me or watching me. So I developed this sort of, I don't want to call it anxiety, but in situations like that socially, I just couldn't cope. So it got to a really weird space, and I think it was about just under a year into this homeschooling environment, which was really just an excuse for me to play video games and to fob work off, where I just I didn't really enjoy it anymore, and I thought something needed to change. And my friends were going out to parties and enjoying their lives, and I was still in contact with them. And I just thought, why again am I in this position where I'm different to everyone, where things aren't quite going to plan for me? And I started running. I don't know why. I thought, right, I need to do something. So I remember my first run. I was in a pair of black skinny jeans and some plimsolls from like PE. I didn't have running gear, and I ran for 30 seconds and walked for 2 minutes and did it again and again. And mate, it was horrible, but it felt good. Those endorphins were like rushing around my body, and I realised that was good for me, and that was my time out. And as much as I hated running, I still hate running now. It was my time to sort of work on myself, and that worked. I kept going and I kept running every day, and I started doing little press ups and sit ups inside my room and just working on myself, and I started to look better, I started to feel better. My mental health started getting better. I stopped having these negative thoughts about myself. I found a little bit of confidence. My hair used to be like down there, like I used to hide my face with my hair, and when I started feeling better about myself, I got a haircut, and it was just all these little changes that added up. So I went from a really dark space as a kid, which was tough, to getting quite confident, and I actually ended up sort of getting back into school. That was where my main battles with my mental health had occurred. I left school with quite good grades. I wanted to join the army actually, but I stayed for a girl, which was an interesting thing. So I ended up going and studying construction. Didn't know what I wanted to do, and that was terrible. The pandemic happened. People were in that same position that I was once in, so everyone was stuck inside. No one was feeling confident about themselves. Everyone was scared to go out, and I almost felt like this, like I'd been there before. So I'd had my own little pandemic when I was a kid. I was stuck inside, and we were allowed out for one walk or one run. And I thought, right, this is my chance to help people. I saw, people on the news helping others, your Joe Wickses and stuff, and I thought, well, who can I help? So I started PTing online. I'd been boxing. Boxing was one of the main things that brought me out of my rut as well. I'd competed all over the UK, and boxing really helped me out. But my PTing online was what sort of started everything, and I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fulfilling. People just wanted to get bigger bums or smaller waists, and it just wasn't for me. I just thought this is great, and if you want to do that, that's fantastic. I'm not gonna say you can't, but it just doesn't fulfill me. And it wasn't until the Telegraph, the local Telegraph, did a news piece about me, and a group of adults with additional needs reached out. I know, Ryan, you said you saw that the other day, and it was they asked me to come in, and they just were so genuinely interested in me. And I was just this nobody, like this 17-year-old, and they just had question after question. And I thought, what an incredible bunch of people. And I wanted to help them. So it was between, when you'd go like lockdown and then freedom, and then lockdown and freedom. So we started doing free online videos. I didn't know what funding was. I didn't know what charities could help me facilitate this work, but I just started doing it for free. And then when the lockdown lifted, I the news picked up on it, and more charities asked me to work with them, and I started my company. I was 17 years old, and I realised, okay, this is what I want to do. I dropped out of college and I went full on. I had a little part-time job at a fashion shop, but I was going for it at 17, and I was doing what I sort of felt fulfilled me.
No, there's so much in there, and I really want to go right the way back to when you first sort of your primary school, your high school, your lashing out. And do you think that is on the back of your dad going through everything he did and whatnot, and you kind of being angry at that? Do you think it
I think it
was
has
that,
to be. I
or
can't find another explanation for why. I think as young people, in our first few years of growing up, we really soak in our environment and our family and what's around us, and we take that with us for the majority of our life. So seeing that and being around that environment, seeing quite a up and down, because when Dad would have bad days at work, or things would go quite to plan, he would get angry and he would lash out himself. So I think by seeing that, it almost made it feel okay as a young person for me. So my behaviour just was the same.
Looking back now on everything you described at school is very much, I'm sat here going, ticking boxes again. I did that. I did that. I did that. I did that. Especially the maths. The maths was the one for me. Right.
Yeah,
So I,
yeah,
I remember on the maths where they would go, here's your
yeah.
equation, they'll write it down. And I used to go, why am I writing it down? I've just done it in my head. There's the answer. And I still do it to this day. This level two I'm doing, it's like, here's the question, and it's like, describe, and it's like, well, why am I going to sit here and write 5 paragraphs when I can write the exactly same thing in 2 sentences? Like, why would I? And I would. It's very rebellious and like, hang on a minute, I am right on this occasion. But how did you? How school was hard. You're very like, aggressive, throwing things around. Again, exactly the same. What is there anything looking back now that you could go, do you know what, this is when it changed? Obviously, with Ryan just mentioned then about when the stuff that happened with your dad, was it a case of potentially you going, I now, that dad's gone, there's just mum, me, and sister, I've got to be now this alpha male. I know even at a young age, I still think we have that in us that we now need to be, right, dad's gone, you're man of the house. That's a big statement to put on a young lad, and you as a young lad, you'll take that on board. Do you reckon that had something to play within it?
Yeah, I think that naturally just does occur. As a male, we've got all these things that are going around us, and I suppose that masculine position was something that I felt I needed to step into. So as especially with two other females in the family, I almost felt like maybe there was some pressure, some underlying pressure on me, and that caused me to lash out at the same time.
Looking at your business now, because I know we only spoke, last week and that. How do you feel? How do you compare yourself with your business now to what your dad was with his businesses? Do you see a comparison? Because I know again that you've gone through a bit of a shit time because of the business. Do you compare the two?
Yeah, I think there is comparisons, but in very different situations. So when I spent that year out of school and locked away, it was almost like something changed. The anger that I had as a kid just turned into like deep sadness and just pity for myself. So it was almost like that anger fizzled out, which I suppose I'm quite lucky for. I started boxing as well, so it gave me a way to channel that, and I've always boxed, and that's always been something that is my out. So in comparison to how maybe stuff went wrong for my dad and how he would react to that, I do also react, but my reaction is just deep sadness. And I go into this sort of state of absolute sadness and feeling sorry for myself and thinking, what did I do wrong? Whereas his reaction might have been more of an outburst of anger. So there is definitely comparisons, but I think when something goes wrong, for example, I will just go and get really down about it and sort of see my bum, if you will. I'll go into this pit of like, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? As opposed to like lashing out on anger. So I'd rather have that than the anger, because I'm not an angry person anymore. And I look back and I'm so glad, because I hated who that angry kid was.
I think, you know, do you ever blame yourself for them outbursts, or do you blame your dad? Do you blame your surroundings? Have you fully accepted them? Everything that have you really forgave everything as a kid?
So for a long time, I blamed my dad. I absolutely blamed my dad. I had this sort of hatred for my dad, bless him, and there was this sort of, it was built up in me, and I think that's why I got so angry, and I think that's why I lashed out, because there was no understanding for it. I was blaming the world. I hated where I was born. If I'm honest, I was not a big fan of Grimsby growing up. I thought, I was looking, everyone had YouTube as kids. YouTube was brand new. It was fun. You get to watch all these American vloggers and everything. And I was watching these guys and looking at their lives and thinking, why am I in Grimsby with no dad, in a shit school with, these situations with no money, whatever it was. We're on benefits. If I wanted something, I'd ask for it, and it was sort of like I wouldn't get it straight away, and other kids would, and it was almost like this very, why me? Why getting angry at the world, as if you will. But I got in contact with my dad when I was about 15. I was about 15, 16. I got back in contact with him then, and I almost, I've absolutely forgiven him for what happened, and there's no blame anymore. I just understand that sometimes life just works like that for certain people, and there's no actual choice, and there's no reason why it might be you or it might be somebody else. We're all just dealt the circumstances we are. So back then I was very, I'd blame everyone but me. Now it's almost like I've not shrugged it off, but learnt to understand that that's just the circumstances and the cards I was dealt, and there's nothing else to it.
What's your what's your thoughts now on the use of YouTube social media? Because this is something we pick up quite a bit. Obviously, you said then,
Yeah,
looking back as when I was younger, we had YouTube, we had social media, looking at these people out there, these influencers that have all these things, and I want that. And there'd be so many young kids now doing exactly the same thing. How is that having an impact on the current state of mental health, in your opinion? Because I think it's bloody fucking massive, mate. In my, you see these people, and again, I want to be them. It doesn't work like that.
yeah. I'm personally conflicted because, on one sense, I feel like if you take it back 50 years, life was a lot simpler. People had sort of lower ambitions, lower goals, but they were happier in some cases. Social media has given us the ability to see everywhere. It's given us the ability to see opportunities outside of just our neighborhood or just our county. And that's had negative and positive impacts on everything. So maybe, it has a negative impact because we can see the rich person, the influencer, the models, the porn stars, whatever you will, and we want better things for ourselves. We've got higher aims, and maybe that isn't quite realistic in our vicinity. But on the other hand, it could almost encourage us to try and get better things for ourselves. So I think it's all dependent on the user of it and their mentality. So not necessarily social media's fault, when it's the same with drugs, isn't it? So it's not drugs or social media that's the problem. It's the way we use them is where the issue lies.
Absolutely, and I think us doing this as a podcast, obviously we've got a platform that we kind of disseminate men's mental health, and I think we have a social responsibility to kind of don't cover up, don't hide it with a false truth. This is what you could have if you follow this tip, this tip, this tip, and it'll be the exact same with you in your fitness business. You can't give give me 3 weeks and I'll let you lose 2 stone. It doesn't happen. You've got to be willing to work at things and stuff like that. So again, for me, it's people like this platform, your platform, and these influencers that say that he's a truth water or something like that. I seen something the other day, and it's, well, no, you've got a social responsibility to share what's real. Don't
We forget that.
and that's it. And then you get these kids that are seeing these influencers, and they're like, wow, I want to be like that. Well, go across a few videos, you might actually see something that's worth seeing. So and I think with the power of sort of Facebook and the Instagram, Twitter, whatever you're using, it's a tool, if used properly, could change the world for the better. And I think seeing what you've done with your business, it started in the lockdown, but you obviously used the power of social media to put what you're out there, and look what it's done, and had that knock on effect. So it goes to show it's quite a powerful thing. But what I want to ask, since your business has come into play, has anything kind of affected your mental health recently with your business? Has it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think again, it's one of those things where I will always have not not drastic battles with mental health, but I always will have a bit of a crazy relationship with mental health because I just think that's how I am as a person. You know, I over exemplify things. I sort of scale things up in my own head. So with the business, you know, I went fully self-employed with 18, and I was 18 years old when I quit my little part-time job, and I worked for myself. And I think that brought a lot of pressure on. I Things go wrong in the business. Things always will go wrong, and there's things that I can't have control over. And I'm not a control freak, but I do enjoy having a level of control over things. There is that safety in that. So when things do go wrong or things don't go quite to plan, I do go into these real low depressive pits where I'm feeling really sorry for myself, or I'm feeling like, you know, should I carry on? I don't want to keep going. It's not going right. Why again? Why me? Going back to that same thought I had as a child, like why can't this just go right? And that affected me and still affects me massively. I used to sort of, if it would go wrong, I used to sort of like look at it and just sort of go into this pit where I'd close everybody out, or I'd start getting a bit stroppy about it and quite sad about what was going on. And that would affect everything around me, from family relationships to personal relationships to friendships, and you know, as well as that, the life that having a business brings is so busy and hectic and crazy, and it doesn't leave time for some of those normal teenager to 20-year-old things that we want to do, you know, lashing out, finding yourself, whatever it is, you know, messing around. So I feel like I lost a little bit of that. Um, so yeah, I always am having ups and downs with my mental health, and the business definitely has a huge impact on how I feel, how I act. And just going back to what Jack said at the beginning, that whenever, you know, I understand whenever I'm in a room, I am bringing energy constantly. I am bringing the most positive vibes. I'm always talking to somebody. I don't have an issue with making conversation with strangers, and I'm so sort of upbeat in that sense, and that in itself is quite exhausting. I would say I'm naturally an extrovert now, but I was absolutely an introvert as a kid. So sometimes that in itself brings its own tiring, you know, that its own tiringness. So yeah.
It's hard. It's hard, and I don't know how you do it. Like I'm in awe of that because I my social anxiety is mental. Like you'll see me around when we're having a coffee and I'm sat on my laptop, and I go there because one, I need to get out of the office to do like my job, but I go there because it puts me in a environment that I'm normally fearful of other people that I don't know, that I know I'm going to run into conversations because it's something I need to work on. It's something I need to improve, and going up to people and starting conversations is very, very tricky, and there's always this barrier, and I'm always struggling to get over this barrier. And it's, you know, Ryan knows recently it has took a massive dip, sadly, but we'll get there. But I look at you when I go in there and I'm like, do you know what, I wish I could be like that guy. But at the same time, and this brings on though that you can't, the whole saying of like don't judge a book by its cover, because people would look at you walking down the street and be like, he's such a happy chap, he's such a happy-go-lucky chap, but internally you don't know what's going on, you really don't. And the same as, you know, I was, I'd be walking down the street, you know, 5 years or so ago, and people would be like, "Oh, he's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with him. He's Jack the lad." And internally, you don't know what's happening. And you talk about this pit that when you have these down moments, you put yourself in this pit. The question being, how deep is this pit for you at any point? Even, you know, the young life that you've had, you know, have you ever had them moments of them like suicidal thoughts, suicidal doubts? Have you ever had any of them experiences?
So I've never got to a point where I've wanted to commit suicide, but I've got to plenty of points where I just have wanted to not exist. I don't know.
Easily.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? There's never any of those. There's never any of those death thoughts at all. But I've just almost wanted to simply disappear. sort of run away and think, it would be nice to just not exist because the pressure's built up or what I'm doing is built up. I've got staff members now and I've
Absolutely.
got sort of people that are relying on us. We help plenty of people. I've almost built this sort of thing up around me. I've put myself on a pedestal to others and built myself up as this public persona at such a young age that, yeah, I've gone into these pits and at sometimes I've gone, I'd just really like to not exist. I'd just like to just disappear.
I think as men, we all have them thoughts. There's times where I've thought to myself, do you know what? Let me disappear into the mountains. Let me just go
Yeah.
to the wilds of Alaska and just kind of live. And something happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. I think that's perfectly normal, and I think that does go to show that, Bailey, you are human. With this sort of public face you put on. Now, with this public face you do put on, are you still hiding from anything?
Um, I think there's still a very unconfident young boy deep down inside of me who craves reassurance and craves almost that publicity. I've built the life that I need in the sense of I do get bigged up. We are constantly on the news or we're constantly on social media, and everyone around me is feeding me positive comments constantly. I don't have negativity, and that's because there's a young lad still deep down inside that just wants praise. Um, and I think the reason why I do what I do is absolutely to help others, but there's definitely a selfish element of I do want to be looked at and told that I'm doing a good job and I'm helping people, and I do crave that sort of response from other people.
I just want to throw something out there because I'm kind of, even in this short period, I'm kind of linking two things together quite easily. And when it's ourselves, we get kind of, blinkered and whatnot. When you first spoke, obviously you spoke about your dad owning these little businesses, um, and then it basically ended. Yeah, bankruptcy, really shit time. So you've gone from a massive high down to what is a shit time. Do you feel then, taking a minute to think, that the way you see your business now is you've automatically asking for this like praise, seeking this praise, wanting to do so well because you don't want to put yourself in a position again where you was with your family at that bankruptcy, back on that council estate, like them, because there will be a link to them emotions and what you're thinking now. Is there a click there, or am I massively off?
I'm
Sometimes I am,
no,
sometimes I'm pretty
I'm
good.
no, I'm petrified of being back in that space. I'm absolutely terrified of being back in that space, even down to just. And it sounds silly, but we had to walk everywhere or get the bus. We didn't have a car because my dad was the one who drove, and my mum couldn't afford. When my dad and mum were young, my grandparents helped my dad pay for his driving license and everything and sort of sort that out. And my mum took a step back because, it was the best thing at the time. So even going back to getting in public transport, like I value my car so much because I don't want to be back to that space. So there's a link just in the fact that I understood that where we were as a family, as children, was terrible for me, and I was constantly hating it. And yes, I am in a lot better of a position now, and I'm in a position where it's weird. Sometimes I have to pinch myself. I speak and I work with and I talk to some pretty incredible people, from high up politicians to celebrities to some of the people that I work with incredible stories. And I never thought I'd be in this position now, but I am. And there's definitely that fear of going back to where we was.
I think that's understandable massively. And I think that whole kind of self-doubt, imposter syndrome, that we all kind of have. And I think for yourself, I think the only thing you need to look at are the people you're helping. The videos you put up in the care home, the smile on them women's faces that they have, the people that suffer with disabilities that you are genuinely helping because of your passion, because of your love, because of this vulnerability that you have this aura that people will go, he is a genuine guy. Like, I can open up to him. I can trust him with what my next project is. Hence why so many charities want to work with you. Hence why so many, do you know what I mean? You've got all this positive stuff around you. And unfortunately, as individuals, like I said, we get blinkered. And me and Ryan have done this since day one. Imposter syndrome on the daily. Hence why we have
Yeah.
weekly chats outside of this to switch our brains off, to go through and go, look, actually, this is actually what we're doing here. This is the space we've created, and you're doing the same. And I think for you, taking that time to sit back and reflect, I think would do you so much benefit to go, do you know what? This week I've done all this. I've been so busy and so confused and so one-minded on business. I've actually achieved all this. Because I'm pretty sure not long ago you took a group of people over to America. Now I don't know anyone that's fucking doing that, mate. I don't know anyone that's been able to do that. Do you know what I mean? And you're still doing your daily stuff, and you're still trying to live your life as a young lad, because you're still learning, you're still growing. You're doing a hell of a lot more than a lot of other people are. And I think that is something to hold, and be extremely, extremely proud of, mate.
And I appreciate that, and it's something that I've been trying to do. Reflect. I think when I would go into these pits, my ex, my partner at the time, would be the one to try and get me out of them. You know, trying to give me positivity and everything. And sort of towards the end, we broke up about 2 months ago because the business was just getting a bit too much, unfortunately. And she mentioned how there's a lot of focus on it and not a lot of focus on her, which was, you know, there's definitely some truth in that. And the business has taken over my life in that sense. But one of the things that she helped before we did break up is she got me this little journal, which was really nice. And I've just been journaling, you know, not every day, but now and again, every other day, and also trying to meditate. And I'm back to boxing pretty full on. I did take quite a big break from boxing. And there's just these tiny little things that, you know, that reflection, and it is slowly helping, because you get so caught up. And I've got this issue where if I'm not busy, I'm like, what's going on? I'm failing right now. Why are we not busy?
Mate, you know, there's so much value in what you've got to say, and you know what you've done. You know, I don't know if anybody, somebody like myself, and I just want to say thank you for that work you have done with, you know, your local community and stuff. I think it's absolutely inspiring, and if somebody can just take a shred of that, then the world would be a lot better. You know, it will be a much better place to live for everyone. So where can people find what you're doing? I think is a massive one. Where can we see what you're doing? Where, you know.
Yeah. So obviously the company's called BeGreatFitness. That was a personal choice. I always used to love the little Everlast adverts when I was boxing. It was like, it's talking about trying to find your greatness. So the company's called BeGreatFitness, because I want everybody to feel like they can be great. It sounds kind of corny, but we're with it now, and I enjoy it and I like it. But it's begreatfitness.org on our website or on social medias. It's literally just Be Great Fitness, but with an underscore, B_Great Fitness. So yeah, you'll find us if you search Be Great Fitness. We're pretty high up on Google.
We will. I say we'll put it into into the description and stuff and whatnot. So, but Bailey, it's been an absolute pleasure, and you know, I think we could go on for hours, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So I'm gonna say thank you. Really, really, you know, great episode, and I can't wait to re-listen to this. Jack, as always, buddy, it's been an absolute pleasure, even with the ginger beard. You know, but I'm going to end the show, but not as I always end the show. I'm going to do, you know, we've got a new close now, so I've been informed that I've got to read this. Well, I've got to go through this. So, guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Let's Be Frank Men's Mental Wealth podcast. Thank you to Bailey for joining us on this brilliant episode. Jack, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Guys, please check out our socials. Find everything under the LBF project. That's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Twitter. It all comes under that one bracket now. So guys, again, thank you very much for tuning in. But I'm going to end the show as I always end the show. Stand up, speak out, and use your voice.